Welcome back to another episode of the Saber Team's Corner. This time we're going to talk to you about a story called Tow Missile Misfire. All right, so this story is one that happened in Fort Benning. A lot of stuff happened at Fort Benning. This one here, I was in the mechanized infantry platoon, scout platoon, and I was a gunner on the Bradley, M2 Bradley. M2 Bradley is this vehicle right here, and it has a 25 millimeter chain gun on it, 7.62 coax missile system, and two tow missiles on the. If you notice that box up there, you'll see it. I'll show you another image here. This box, is called a hammerhead, basically, and that's where they keep two tow missiles in. And I'll show you another picture. And so the tow missile is actually B firing, and the number A is the hammerhead. Now, missile rack number 1 is on the outside. Missile rack number 2 is on the inside. Now, that comes into play here when it comes down to the story. So, we're on the missile range, and we have a whole, I think it's like a pallet of either pallet or 19. It was a bunch of anti-tank missiles we had to fire off. Now, the only thing about these anti-tank missiles, you have to be very careful of them because they have a sweat, they sweat. So if they sweat a lot, they're going to be, if they have this little window indicator on them, and if you look in there and the window indicator is pink, that means it's corroded and full of water, and there's a possibility you're going to get a misfire. But we will fire it anyway, just to see if we can get this thing going. So the missile itself is it's called, the reason it's called a tow, it's called a tube launch, optically tracked, wire guided missile. And basically that nose cone in the front, it has a shape charge inside of it, an HE shape charge. The whole missile itself weighs about 41 pounds, and it's about 4 feet long. And it can shoot out to about 3,000 meters. And here's a cutaway of it. And you can see on the nose of it, you can see the shape charge, and all that's embedded around, it's a copper shape charge, so it's embedded around HE. So when it hits a flat surface like a tank or a vehicle, what it does, the shape, you know how shape charges work. They push with such a force that's going through, with the explosion coming from behind, they will melt and cut a hole inside any vehicle with the copper. It creates a fusion blast almost. And in the middle, you see 4 fins, and you also see exhaust hole. So what happens is 4 motors right there, because this thing is wire guided. So it's actually connected to you the whole time you're firing this thing. So you have to you have to track the target with the optics and try to hit the missile directly onto the target. If you track the target, it works. If you track the missile, you're going to miss. So those motors, by those fins, what those motors do, they stabilizes the missile. If you make a right correction, it'll shoot power to the right. If it makes an up correction, it'll shoot power to the bottom. And also in the back, it also has 4 more fins, because that is a forward thrusting motor that's in the back that pushes this thing out to destroy the target. And behind that is a whole spool of wire, copper wire, thin copper wire, that will come out and travel the whole way, and it gives commands from your vehicle to the missile until impact. The only problem about the wire guided, you can't shoot the thing over water because it will short out and the missile will go all over the place. Two, you can't shoot it over trees or because it might snap the wire and now you got a missile just flying around all over the place. So it's very interesting. Now, when you fire this thing, it's going to look basically when you fire your Bradley and the Hammerhead, the missile should come out, everything should be perfect, and boom, you hit target and you go on your merry way, right? So, for me, that wasn't the case. What happened with me was I'm going through. I get the okay to go ahead and fire. I'm gonna fire missile number 1. And so as I'm getting ready to fire this missile, I'm going through my pre-fire checks in the gunner seat and make sure everything's right. I got my green lights, everything's hot. I got electric. And so all of a sudden I get the commands, identify and all this stuff. And the last command was fire. So I squeeze the toggles. I'm hot. I'm in the arm switch is off, and pull the toggles. Nothing happened. She doesn't fire. But my lights on my missile is blinking like it fired. So I go through misfire procedures, do it again, and yell out fire, pull the toggles, nothing happened. I do misfire procedures at least 3 times. Then I go to manual fire, and that's disconnecting all electronics, and I'm going down. There's a manual fire switch by my left leg, so I go down and try to fire that with the manual fire switch. Nothing. At this point, we call the tower and say, hey, we got a misfire. Something's wrong. And they just say, wait for a couple minutes. Maybe, she'll fire off. Just keep the target and get in sight, and just in case it do fire off. Well, we wait for about 10, 15 minutes. Nothing happens. I pop the hatch, and I go to look at the Hammerhead. And to my surprise, I see a live missile on tube number 1 sticking out about 2 feet. Yeah, 2 feet. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I ease back down into the turret and close the hatch down behind me and call the tower and say, hey, I got a number 1 it's got a misfire and the missile's hanging out. We need it removed. And so we had a couple of guys who came up. I won't mention their names, but they came up and they were wearing Cape pots and flak jackets. And they came up inside the Bradley, banged on my door, pow, pow, pow. We're here to get your missile out. I tell the tower it's missile number 1. I'm yelling at them in the Bradley, open the door, lock the turret, and tell them it's missile number 1 on the outside. Not number 2, number 1. We got you. All right, go ahead and turn your turret around and put it into the load position. Now, the Bradley itself, when it's in the firing position, is straightforward. But in order to load those tubes, you got to move that thing up 45 degrees and turn it in so many degrees. And so the guys can get in the back. They have to open that back hatch, get in the back, and reach up, unlock that missile, and grab it and slide it out. Okay? So we did that. And I'm in the turret. I'm just sitting in there, and I can hear them taking the missile out. And they took it out, and so I decided to pop my head up out of the turret and take a look at them walking away to the dud pit. Well, I noticed the missile they had was fully intact. There was no dirty missiles sticking out of it. I was like, that's odd. And so they went and placed it in the dud pit, came back. All right, it's in the dud pit. You can go ahead and turn and go ahead and fire. So I turned, thought nothing of it. Never looked at my hammerhead and brought it back down, go through fire position sequence again, and I noticed my missile number one light wouldn't go off. I was like, this is odd. So I shut everything down, got out of the Bradley, through the inside cargo chute, went and looked at the back of my hammerhead, and I saw missile number one was missing. I mean, number two was missing, and number one was still hanging, hanging in the missile was still hanging out of number one's tube. And I was like, these knuckleheads. And so I get back in my Bradley, call the tower, and tell them those idiots pulled a wrong missile. And they need to come back. So the tower is like, all right. They sent him back. And I yelled at him again, take missile. Take missile number one out. And so they decided to, so I had to turn the turret back around in this configuration again. And I can hear them unlocking tube number one. So they pulled the tube out, this time it out, and I yelled back at them when they was going out. I said, bring my other missile back because it's good. We can fire it. So they was like, well, gotcha. So they tucked the missile out, then tucked that over to the dud pits because if we had to call EOD to come out there and blow it up, basically. And they grabbed my other missile, put it back into the vehicle, and loaded in the launch tube 2. So at that time, I immediately turned the turret back around, go through fire sequence. I only had one missile at this point. I couldn't fire 2. And I go ahead and fire the missile, and boom, hit target. Everything went smooth, right? Well, here comes the strange part. I don't know what the Army's thinking sometimes. But after we got through firing all these missiles, the Army had the nerve to tell us we have to go downrange in a live missile impact zone and retrieve all that wire from that missile. I was like, what? Yeah, wear your K-pots, your helmets, wear flak jackets. Don't touch any ordnance when you go down range. Don't touch anything, you know? I'm like, really? So I get out of the Bradley. We go walking down range, and I never seen so many unexploded missiles and ordnance in my entire life on one range. There were ordnance everywhere. You want to touch a lot of stuff, but you realize a lot of the stuff, the warheads are still intact. But the funny part about it, the copper wire laid over the ordnance that was unexploded ordnance that was down there. So you had to grab that copper wire, take it off that ordnance. Hopefully it didn't get hung up, and start spooling it back up so you can collect it. And it was crazy. And we were stepping over missiles and all types of stuff that was down there. It was nuts that they wanted us to walk down there and did it. So we walked all the way down there, retrieved all the wire, all the way up to the impact zone, and walked all the way back through the same debris without stepping on anything. Sometimes the Army doesn't have a logic. But that was a very interesting story. And this goes to show you, not everything's perfect as it seems to be in the Army. All right. And with that, I want to say we'll see you next time on Saber Team's Corner. All right. See you on the range, guys.